And let's bring in Mark Kenny now, a senior fellow and professor at the Australian Studies Institute at the ANU. Let's talk about the Teal independents. First up, Kylie Tink, in that debate moderated by our colleague Laura Jays this afternoon, wouldn't say who she'll back in the event of a hung parliament. It's a similar message we're hearing from Monique Ryan and other independent candidates. Should they be upfront with their voters before people go to the ballot box?
Look, I think this is a really politically charged sort of issue, and it's understandable that some people with vested interests, particularly those major parties that are looking to smoke out, as they see it, these independents, that they should be putting the pressure on them to do it. But let's face it, it's really hard to win a lower house seat. It doesn't happen very often. It usually happens as a matter of some sort of surprise. These are different, these candidates. These are candidates in with a real chance. So I suppose it's...
I was just looking at North Sydney. The bookies have Kylie Tink at $2.35. So Trent Zimmerman at about $1.60. That's right in the mix.
It probably is. I mean, he starts with a fair advantage of incumbency. What is it, an 8.5%, 9% seat?
9.3.
Yeah, there you are. So it's a pretty safe seat, you would think, in ordinary times. And that is the case for most of these sort of seats where the Teal independents are making a push. So there's a legitimate question to be asked. But I think the answer has to be from these people is we're campaigning on these particular issues. If I'm campaigning on faster action on climate change and an integrity commission, better representation of women in politics, these kinds of issues, then those are the issues I will be driving in any negotiation. Now, if whoever wins or whoever is in a position to negotiate with me can promise me, to my satisfaction, action on that agenda, then they'll be in with a very good shot of getting my support. That ought to be their answer. It's issues-based rather than parliamentary loyalty-based. 3
and a bit weeks left of the campaign, and it's all zeroing in on cost of living, which is already, people being stretched by the costs at the Bowser, now mortgage rates to go up possibly as early as next week, Mark.
Yeah, that's right. And housing costs are, the biggest single cost that most households have, and it's about to go up, right? So that's obviously quite a concern for the government. I see that John Howard's made a comment today where he thinks that this should just reinforce in some voters' minds the need to stick with the government they've got. I don't think that's the argument the government's going to be putting, but I think in their private councils they'll be hoping that they're not dealing with a rate rise next week because it's a pretty difficult argument to make. The simple fact is as I think you've been identifying, and Andrew Clennell as well, when costs of living are going up, people get angry, people get anxious, people start to look to the government for some sort of assistance. They ask questions why. You're at the end of a nearly 10-year government so far, and they might want to blame the government. So, yes, it's a politically difficult situation for the government to find itself in. And I think, Chalmers had a pretty good line, I think, this morning when he was saying that the government's pretty keen, pretty quick to take credit for the economic good side of the story, but when when the economic news is bad, it tends to be international forces. So we'll see if that line cuts through.
Well, that's the key question, isn't it? Do people gravitate towards the coalition, whose traditional strength has been economic management, or are they annoyed by the added costs that they're facing and have that protest? And
it's really fascinating, that question.
We don't know.
Well, we don't know, and we don't know the extent to which that is even true. I mean, it just gets repeated all the time that this is their favoured battleground, the two battlegrounds supposedly most favourable to the coalition, national security and economic management. Well, there are difficulties for the government in both of these spheres at the moment, as we know, in terms of the Solomon Islands and the like. So it's going to be fascinating to see the extent to which they are able to leverage this issue, or whether it just turns up as people saying, well, we don't think the government's done a good job and they want to boot it out.
One of the things Anthony Albanese faces is he's got to get out of COVID isolation tomorrow, and then he's got his launch on Sunday. It's about reassuring people, isn't it, that he's up to it, particularly after the stumbles to begin the campaign. So he wants to have a really strong launch and then a debate, maybe 2, in the final 3 weeks. This debate continues around the debates for the leaders.
Campaigns are always about the risk, really, as much as they are about the achievements you can make or the gains that you can make along the way. And I don't think Labor can afford to make any more gaffes. It's had a rocky start, I think, to the campaign. Obviously, Anthony Albanese did personally, and then interrupted really by this COVID thing. So that's been a fascinating dynamic in itself. You know, we've seen some other people coming to the fore. It doesn't appear to have harmed Labor's position, but you're right. I mean, he's got to get through now the launch, which presumably will be a very stage managed thing, and you'd imagine be all very positive. But then those debates. Scott Morrison's obviously known to be quite a good campaigner and is looking to make up ground, so he'll be pretty punchy, one imagines. It's going to be an interesting, I think, high-tempo close to this campaign.
3 and a bit weeks. Mark Kenny from the ANU, thanks as always.